The subclass we're reviewing has a unique concept that I've never seen before. It allows the players to switch between 3 different features depending on the situation. But the real question is it broken or is it balanced? Let's find out on Homebrew Review. First, let's review the Master of Arms flavoring. While some warriors focus on brute strength alone, those who call themselves the Master of Arms seek to combine their rigorous hard training with an equally trained tactical mind. They excel at exploiting any weakness presented by their foes just as much as brutally overwhelming them with their raw might tempered by discipline. These skilled fighters seek nothing but perfection in form and see each fight as a mere stepping stone towards their goal. Now that we're seeking perfection, let's review the first feature, Martial Stances. At 3rd level, you learn how to maintain advantage over your foes by adapting to the situation at hand. As a bonus action on your turn, or when you roll initiative, you can assume one of the following stances, gaining its related effects. The stance lasts until you use your bonus action to change to another stance or fall unconscious. You cancel the effects of a stance as a bonus action. Before we even get into the stances, there are 3 things I want to emphasize. First, I really like the concept of stance switching. You establish it as the subclass core mechanic, and I think it's a really good one. Second, I like the flexibility you give by allowing the stances to be swapped by either a bonus action or initiative. And third, I want to point out that the stance effects last until you either change the stance or you fall unconscious, meaning that they're not bound by a resource, essentially making them permanent. That being said, let's see the first of the 3 stances. Battle Stance. You assume an observant yet battle-ready stance. Your walking speed is increased by 5 feet, and you gain a +2 to perception checks. Out of the 3 stances, I like to think of Battle Stance as the neutral gear because it's the only stance out of the 3 that gives benefits that aren't related to combat. I really like the increased speed and the focus on perception checks. It has a lot more utility to the fighter, which I really enjoy. If I was a player, I would personally always have this active and then only swap when combat starts. The only thing that I'm rubbing up against is the +2 to perception checks. I really like the flavor, but just not the execution because of how static the +2 is. Personally, I would give a +5 to passive perception because +5 is such a large number that, while static, fits better with 5e mechanics. I also chose to increase passive perception because the stance gives me the vibes of being observant and ready. Perception is a proactive skill, and I think that passive perception might just be a better choice flavor-wise. The second stance is Defensive Stance. You focus on defending and avoiding harm. You gain a +1 to your AC, but your walking speed is reduced by 5 feet, and your attacks, other than opportunity attacks, suffer a -1 penalty to hit. I like the +1 to AC. The only worry I have is it being combined with the defensive siding style. For example, if we have chainmail armor giving us an armor class of 16, grab a shield for an extra +2, and then get a defensive fighting style, and then take this, we get an AC of 20 at level 3, which I'm a bit worried about. An alternative could be the interceptive fighting style option, or perhaps giving advantage on opportunity attacks a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. But to be honest with you, it's a bit difficult to find a right answer. Either or, even if you did choose to keep the +1 AC, I can confidently say that you don't need to give the subclass a -5 in speed or a -1 penalty to hit. The third and final stance is the Berserker Stance. You prepare to attack with your full might, disregarding defense for the time being. Any attacks you make score a critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20, but your AC is lowered by 1. This is my least favorite out of the 3 because it's the same ability as the Champion Fighter. In D&D 5th edition, we don't want to copy an ability from another class unless it's for a really good reason. In this case, it's unfortunately just stepping on the toes of the Champion Fighter. Essentially, why would I ever choose to be a Champion Fighter if I could just choose this subclass and gain the same benefit, but better? I also don't enjoy lowering the AC because it's both static and unnecessary. I see what you're doing, using the -1 AC to compensate for the crit on the 19 or 20, but usually we just tie the benefit to a resource or a timer. Like, for example, the Hexblade Warlock. If you want a feature that's a bit more offensive, I suggest either giving advantage in some fashion or giving increased damage in the form of a die that's not static and bound to a resource. Overall, for the first feature, I think you created a really cool foundation for the class. My fear, it's a fear that will persist throughout the subclass though, is balancing. Because you're able to shift stances without any drawback, you don't get one stance, you get all 3 stances, which means you get all 3 benefits. And it's just a lot to give at level 3. And that's not even mentioning the second level feature called Weapon Specialization. When you gain this feature at 3rd level, choose one of the following weapon groups: swords, axes, maces, or polearms. Whenever you make an attack using the weapon from your chosen group, you add half your proficiency bonus, rounded down, to the damage roll. Whenever you gain a level in this class, you can switch your preferred weapon group. Deciding whether a weapon falls into a certain category can be quite open-ended. A scythe could be considered a polearm, a flail is similar enough to a mace, and so on. Consult your DM on what kind of category would suit your desired weapon. Assuming the reason why you have this mechanic here is because of the World of Warcraft flavoring, I see the vision. But from a homebrew reviewer perspective, I don't really enjoy this feature for 3 reasons. First, adding your proficiency bonus to the damage roll, even if it's halved, can be a lot. It's the equivalent of a +1 magic item, and the main reason why I don't like it is because most of the features that give extra damage come in the form of a die, not a static increase. For example, the Battlemaster Fighter gets extra damage from their maneuvers by adding on a die from a resource pool, not just a static increase. The second reason is because each weapon type, no matter what, gets the same benefit. Meaning right now, it doesn't matter which weapon I choose, I'd still get the same benefit. I would like to see some more variation in the weapon style, even at level 3. And third, looking at this class from a bird's eye perspective, this is a lot of features to give at 3rd level. To compare, the Battlemaster Fighter, known to be one of the better fighter subclasses, gets Artisan proficiency in 3 Battlemaster maneuvers that they can use 4 times. When compared to the strength of these 3rd level features, it's obvious that the Master of Arms Fighter just comes out on top. But a saving grace for the weapon specialization is that I do like the limitation on the switches, because it limits the flexibility, making the feature generally weaker. Now that we're finished with all the 3rd level features, it's time to taste our first 7th level feature, Tactical Mastery. By 7th level, you have learned to outmaneuver your opponents by employing subtle alterations to your fighting style. You gain one of the following effects depending on your current martial stance. Quick introduction, I do really like how as the class grows, you're expanding on the core feature. 10 out of 10. Overpower. When making an attack in battle stance, the target of your attack cannot take reactions in response to being attacked. This is a super cool feature. I really like the concept of negating reactions, and I think that this is a great way to execute it. However, there's 2 things I'm rubbing up against. First, that this feature is moving away from the battle stance, being a neutral/utility stance, which may have not been your intention, but I personally like it that way. And second, I think this is far more fitting of the Berserker flavoring than the Observant Ready battle stance. An alternative benefit, keeping in line with my agenda of wanting this feature to be utility-based, could be gaining an advantage on initiative or adding something initiative-based. The second benefit is Intercept. When you hit a creature with an opportunity attack while in defensive stance, you can move up to your speed without provoking opportunity attacks yourself as part of the same reaction. You must end this move within 5 feet of the creature you hit with the attack. This benefit is weird, and the reason why I say that is because of 2 reasons. First, in a defensive stance, our speed is reduced by 5 feet, which means that the 2 features in the same stance are contradicting one another. Second, I don't understand the purpose of ending your movement within 5 feet of the creature you hit with the attack. It, bluntly put, doesn't do anything. Unless you're in a narrow alleyway, you're not really getting in the way of anything. You're not blocking, you're kind of just there. And for that reason, I'm out. The third benefit is Slam. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack in Berserker stance, if you haven't made any attacks since the start of your last turn, you can add an additional weapon damage die to the attack's damage. This is an interesting benefit because it's essentially making up for damage if you didn't attack last turn, but honestly, I don't like it because it probably wouldn't trigger that often in combat. I personally feel that just getting an extra damage die tied to a resource could be a better fit for the Berserker stance. Now that we're done with the stances, it's time for weapon expertise. Starting at 7th level, your mastery over various weapons allows you to gain an additional effect on your attacks depending on the weapon used for the attack. Axes. Any creature you hit with an attack has its AC reduced by 1 until the end of your next turn as you tear its armor asunder. This penalty does not stack. I love this idea, but I do want to note that you don't need to add that the penalty wouldn't stack because same name sources don't stack. So you don't need an extra sentence at the end. But back to the benefit, I really like this concept. I personally think that it'd be simpler to give advantage on the next attack, but I think that's much more up to creator's discretion. Either or, good feature. For swords, whenever you score a critical hit against a creature, you can make an additional attack with the same weapon as part of the same action. I like this. I feel like it adds that slashing concept when you're constantly attacking, which I really enjoy. And because it only activates on a crit, the chances are low, which balances out the benefit. Really good feature. For maces, whenever you score a critical hit against a creature, you can attempt to daze it, forcing it to make a constitution saving throw, becoming stunned until the end of your next turn on a failed save. Similar to the swords, I like it. I'm just a bit nervous about this stun effect. The fact that it's connected to a critical hit and a con save makes me feel better about the balancing, but the stun as an effect is just bad. We've seen problems with it because of the monk's stunning strikes, and it just sucks to go up against as a DM. Balancing wise, fantastic. The con save and crit combined really seal the deal. As it is, it's great. I'm just personally worried more about the stun. Last but not least, we have polearms. Any creature you hit with an attack has its walking speed reduced by 10 until the start of your next turn. No comments, fantastic. 10 out of 10, I really enjoy it. Now we move on to the mastery of arms. At 10th level, you gain access to 3 special moves, each unique to the combat stances. As a bonus action on your turn, you can perform the move corresponding with your currently active combat stance. You can perform each of these moves once and regain the ability to do so when you finish a short rest. The first strike is Mortal Strike. You instantly make a weapon attack against one creature of your choice. On a hit, the attack's damage is increased by the amount equal to half your level, and if the target regains any hit points until the end of your next turn, the amount of hit points regained is halved, only usable in a battle stance. Overall, I really like it, but it's getting farther away from that utility that I enjoyed. Nonetheless, I really like the burst damage increase, but honestly, I think that you can get away with just having no hit points regained until the end of your next turn. But if you do decide to keep it, then make sure to specify whether it is rounded up or rounded down. The next strike is called Revenge. Until the end of your next turn, your AC is increased by an amount equal to half your proficiency bonus. The first time a creature within 5 feet of misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to make one opportunity attack against it, only usable in a defensive stance. Overall, I like it. I honestly think you could get away with increasing the AC by 5, just like with the shield spell. And I also like the opportunity attack benefit. The last strike is called Whirlwind. If you had taken the attack action this turn and had attacked at least 2 different creatures with the action, you could then, as a bonus action, make 2 additional attacks. However, each of those attacks must target a different creature, but also not target any of the original 2 creatures you struck with your first action, only usable in the Berserker stance. First, you don't need with the action or as a bonus action because it's an implied bonus action from the very beginning. Second, chill idea, it reminds me of the Path of Fury Barbarian. This ends up being a potential 6 attacks, but it's not the most worrying thing in the world because you're hitting other creatures, it's once per short rest. Overall, in a microcosm, I like the majority of the 10th level features, but on a macro scale, they're all a bit worrying because of the flexibility. You essentially get 3 features in one because you use each one once per long rest. Because of that, the feature ends up being sizably strong when compared to other 10th level fighter features. I would also prefer a long rest recharge over a short rest recharge just because of how strong these features are. The next feature is called Sweeping Strikes. Starting at 15th level, you can cut through multiple enemies with ease. Once per turn, when you reduce a creature's hit points to 0 with a weapon attack, you can make 1 additional attack with the same weapon as part of the same action. Honestly, I like it. No notes. The fact that you have to reduce a creature to 0 hit points is a good requirement. As for our final feature, we have the Master of Stances. By 18th level, the flow of combat has become a natural state of being to you, allowing you to harness the full potential of each of your stances. Battle Stance. The increase to your walking speed becomes 10 feet, and when you use your bonus action to enter Battle Stance, for the rest of your turn, your movement does not provoke opportunity attacks. I like this a lot. I think it pairs really well with the utility concept, but it also makes the defensive stance feature at level 7 worthless because it's doing the same thing. Then there's Defensive Stance. The increase to your AC becomes 2, and you gain a +2 bonus to all saving throws. This is okay. I already talked about the AC increase, but by 18th level, there's a lot of balancing that's gone out the window. I do think that the +2 bonus to all saving throws is a bit much, but I think in a microcosm, it's alright. There's also Berserker Stance. You now score a critical hit on a roll of 18 to 20. The champion fighter is screaming out, crying for help. You've essentially stolen everything the champion fighter was and was meant to be. I really don't like it because it steps on its toes. And last but not least, you can use each of the bonus actions granted by your Mastery of Arms feature twice before needing to take a short rest. This is pretty crazy, but again, by 18th level, a lot of balancing gets thrown out the window. Similar to my thoughts on the 10th level feature, individually in a microcosm, these are all good features. But when they're combined together and you can swap between each one, it's too overpowered. Overall, I think this is a great subclass. It's the best one I've seen so far. I like the majority of these features, but the biggest problem comes with how many and how strong all these features are. If you want to make changes, I suggest making the stances less flexible, making the stances weaker, and perhaps removing the weapon specialties altogether. On a tier list, I place this as strong, definitely below the other 2. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below if you like your homebrew to be reviewed.